all I was showing in this sort of digression, that our mind, our self, is not inside our heads, but extends. And so you see, you have as the great vehicle of this extension of the universe, you have space. And you see immediately that you cannot pin space down. You cannot really conceive space at all. Look at the wonder a child has when it asks questions and begins. What's up there? What's beyond? What's after that? What's after that? The child is absolutely fascinated by thinking about that. Do you know all children are fascinated with infinity? Don't you remember seeing, say, a child's book? And on the cover of this book is a little girl sitting, reading the same book, with the same little girl on the cover. And so naturally, there's another little girl on the cover of the book she's looking at in the picture. And so the child begins to wonder, how small can it get? How far can it go? Or they get in opposing mirrors and look. And gee, that's wonderful. Why can't you line them up so that it doesn't just disappear around the corner always? Couldn't you get in straight on this? Seems so difficult. I mean, what did God do before he started the world? You think back. What would it be like to be in heaven and live forever and ever and ever and ever? And immediately this somehow stretches the skull. And children love doing this because children are always trying out experiments on themselves. They prod themselves, pull themselves. They love to spin in circles and make themselves feel dizzy. Because that's a great thing, you know, that feeling. They're always fascinated with the limits of experience. So what's out beyond that? Of course, now when a sophisticated astronomer tries to tell you that space is finite, we resent this. And say, all right, space is finite, but what's outside it? Well, the astronomer says, you see, you can only talk about an outside, inside space. Outside space, there is no outside. You see, the mind won't take it. The sense, you see, of infinity. So this space fascinates us, going on forever, expanding. It seems to be actually going on forever, see, if the universe is a huge explosion. But you can see, can't you, I think this. Space, although you cannot pin it down, and it has the quality of infinity, there's no way of talking about space, because it has no color, it has no weight, you can't cut it, you can't possibly chop it into pieces. And yet, at the same time, you cannot differentiate it from solids. We come to another important point here, you see. That solid and space are in a secret conspiracy with each other. Actually, there's very little solid in the world. Most of what appears to be solid appears so by virtue of the speed at which it's jiggling. It's like an electric fan, which when put in rotation, the blades appear to form a solid disc. And this chair is solid for rather the same reasons. Well, you can't put your finger through it. It's moving too fast. But actually, whatever it is that's dancing in space is increasingly difficult to define. The more you think about energy, you see, and you can make a calculus of energy like you make a calculus of wiggles in the world, and you can say there are various waves or wavicles or particles of energy which we give all sorts of different names to, but the more we pursue it, the more it all seems to disappear, like space. The more you try to think what it is, the more difficult it is. So in the same way, the more you try to say, now come on, let's sit down, what is this here? It's all right if you stop at a certain point. Then you say, well, now we know, that's practical. See? If you keep on asking questions, everything falls apart. You notice this in the scholarly world. Scholars spend far more time debunking than they do creating. Because everything that has ever happened has been debunked, practically. You can show that there is no evidence, that Julius Caesar existed, not really. Certainly there's no evidence that Jesus existed, that Socrates existed. There's a great deal of doubt about Plato. Probably the Emperor Ashoka was a myth, and so on. You can go on in that indefinitely, finding out that there really is no evidence. Because that is the work of the analytical intellect, you see. When you finally try to be God, that's to say, define it exactly. Now, just where is it? And let's get perfectly clear so it's fixed, see? It all becomes slippery. Because in order to handle the world, you see, you have to touch it rather gently. You mustn't try to pin things down. As they say in Zen, you do not try to drive a nail into the sky. Because that's the beauty of space, you see. There's nothing in it to hang on. It hasn't a hook to put your hat on, somewhere in space. And yet, it hasn't got a floor to fall onto. See, if space had a concrete floor on the bottom, it'd be pretty dangerous stuff. But it doesn't. There's nowhere in space to collide with space. You can run into somebody or something else, yes, but not with space. Figure then on this. Work on this hypothesis, you see. It's only a hypothesis at the moment, nothing more. Space is you, because you are equally inaccessible to inspection. When you look to find out who you are, somebody like a Zen master will interrupt you and say, "Excuse me, but who is it that wants to know? Who is it that's looking?" Find out that. So you're chasing your own tail like a little dog. All this, you see. So space is like you, only we turned in the ordinary way to think of ourselves. We make the gesture like this. I'm here. We go this way. I can feel this. I'm inside it. It's me. See? But always, when you get a certain feeling about things, examine the opposite possibility. That you are this. What you see outside you, feel outside you, is the way you feel inside your skin. Since all the optical images, shapes and colors, everything, are neurological states in the brain. So what appears to you as outside is the most intimate feeling you have of the inside of your head.